Hi, this is Billy Earl on Eastern Shore Politics. We have a person here we are very proud to have on our show today, Bob Taylor. Bob is a walking encyclopedia of downtown issues because he's been involved as an attorney, but just as much, he's been involved as a longtime resident of Salisbury and seen many things that many other people have not seen. Bob, thank you for taking the time to come on today. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm fourscore plus a few in age, not to be Lincoln-esque, but I grew up across the bay near Ellicott City. Went to college, Navy, worked for a couple years, then went to law school. After I graduated, I was a clerk for a federal judge in Baltimore for a year, and then came down here in '71.
Okay.
So I've been here for 50 plus years. Most of that time I've been, in fact almost all of it, in downtown Salisbury. Our office was at One Plaza East for many years.
Right.
I was down there almost every day, quite frequently on weekends. So I've seen it change over the years from what it was when I moved here in '71 to what it is today. Obviously in the mid-'60s, the commercial part of it, retail, began to decline. However, the office, and particularly government office, has exploded in that period of time. Many of the buildings that are there, the government office building, the Paul Martin State Office building, the courthouse expansion, that wasn't there in '71.
Right.
It's all occurred since then.
Okay.
And so it's increased the traffic demand for that usage as the retail has declined. So that's kind of a real quick overview of 53 years of downtown
Where'd you go to law
Salisbury. I went to Washington and Lee.
Got it.
In Lexington, Virginia.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good school.
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to talk today about two subjects. We're going to talk about the horizon, but we're going to talk about the downtown density issue. This has been a hot topic. What's your take on this?
Well, getting back to this change in how things have happened in Salisbury over the last half century roughly, what we've seen is more or less the same level of parking demand. Now that was handled to some extent by the parking garage, which was built in the 1970s.
Right.
And then it was increased, I believe, around 1990. There was a little bit more added on. That's about 700 spaces. Then there are various open parking lots. However, what's happened in the last 20 years, in 2010, the comprehensive plan called for a downtown density of residential units of 40 units per acre.
Right.
Now that would have also required at that time on-site parking for the tenants and visitors to those apartments. Come 2018, that parking requirement was taken out. So
Right.
there's no longer any fast, specific parking requirement.
Was there a rationale for why it was removed?
You'd probably have to ask Jake Day.
Right.
I think Jake Day is responsible for most of what happened since he became the mayor. I think that was in 2015.
Okay.
Of course, he's no longer the mayor.
Right.
Yeah. It doesn't make any sense to me to do that. And then on top of that, after that 2018 change, the city sold almost all of the parking lots in terms of number of spaces in downtown Salisbury to developers.
Okay.
Now that development has not yet occurred, so many of those lots are still being used for parking. So we've not really seen the effect, number one, of the loss of those parking spaces or what's going to happen when they're developed, and that would then increase the parking demand.
Right.
So that's one big issue. The other kind of elephant in the room, if you will, is the university's plan, once they move the library, where it is now in downtown Salisbury, out to the old Ward Museum building.
Mm-hmm.
That property is going to be developed by the university for a performing arts center.
Right.
And there's been different discussions as to how big that's going to be. In their announcement in May, it said they were calling for a 1,000-seat auditorium, plus a 450-seat one.
Right.
Now, whether that's feasible or not, whether they can get the money for it, I don't know. But if they can get the money for even half of that, there's going to be one heck of a parking problem.
Yes.
Because you've got this other demand that I mentioned. If all of this occurs and these parking lots are gone and they're developed, And then we have, in addition to that, we've got, for example, they moved the Ward Museum. It's now become the Eastern Shore Museum of Culture in downtown Salisbury. That's going to have, obviously, a parking demand.
Right.
There are many vacant spaces in existing buildings in downtown Salisbury. The old White and Leonard store downtown, vacant as far as I know, completely. First National Bank, that's the building with the big concrete columns, vacant as far as I know.
Okay.
These spaces are either going to fill up or they're going to be revamped for something else. And that's going to increase it. So when you run the numbers, I mean, it's almost common sense. There's just going to be a heck of a parking problem
Right.
if this occurs. Now that's on the agenda for tomorrow at Planning and Zoning.
Yes, sir, it is.
Let me give you the background on that. The Gillis Group, and when I say Gillis Group, it's actually, I think, managed by people from across the bay who are partners in the LLC.
It is? Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
It's a fellow named Kevin Carney, who's now with the McKenzie Group in Baltimore.
Okay.
He's an experienced apartment developer.
Right.
But in any event, they're the ones, I think, that are calling the shots on this. They're not fronting it. They're trying to make it look like, oh, this is Gillis doing it. But in any event, tomorrow, what is going to happen is, and I'll give you a little background, at first they applied for a special exception to increase that 40 units per acre
That's right,
limit up to 77. What they want to build, their 200 plus apartment units, would be 77 units per acre.
Okay.
Now that was denied by the Board of Appeals.
Right.
They then appealed that to the Circuit Court, asking the Circuit Court to tell the board they were wrong. A group that I'm affiliated with, I'm not the attorney for it, but I'm one of the participants, we challenged that in court, and their appeal was dismissed.
Right.
Now they've taken that on to the higher court in Annapolis.
The appellate court.
So they could go further on that. I won't get into the weeds on that one. But what they've done is to try to essentially end run what the Board of Appeals did. So now they want the city, council to just say, okay, well, let's increase the density to 80 units per acre.
Okay.
So then they would be fine. They could just go ahead. As I say, just
With a stroke of a
totally
pen.
disregarding what the
Right.
Board of Appeals did after a 3-hour hearing
Yeah.
back in November of last year.
Okay.
When Gillis was there with an attorney, architects, Kevin Carney was there, and it was a dog and pony show for about 3 hours.
Okay.
We responded. We were there at that hearing. So anyway, that's what's on the agenda for tomorrow. The Planning and Zoning Commission will make a recommendation. They don't make the final decision. They make a recommendation on this.
Okay.
And the issue is really, it's been, some people have said, oh, there ought to be a compromise. That's not what's before the commission. What's before the commission is a request made to double the density, not anything in between. So essentially, they should make an up and down vote on that. Now, I don't know what they're going to do.
Right.
Can't control them.
Yeah.
But that's really what the legal ramification of this is. That will go back, whatever they recommend, pro or con or something in between, that will go back to the city council. And then they can do whatever they're going to do
Okay.
on this. I have some thoughts on that. I'll get into them if you want me
Please
to.
do.
Or we can, I think it's pretty obvious that at least 3 members of the city council are in favor of giving them whatever they want to do
Right.
the apartments. Two of the members on it were on the city council that
When all this
decided to sell the
originally
lots
took
to the
place,
Gillis
yeah.
Group. Yeah. And the president of the city council, who actually works for Green Street Housing, that
That's
has
true.
some property down there, he's made it very clear, particularly at the last meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission, that he's all for this.
No conflict of interest, sir?
I would say so. I'll get into this if you want me
Okay.
to, but I mean, I think we maybe want to keep moving because
Yeah.
that's not really the real issue. Is
That's
should
not
it-
the core.
should be increased.
Yeah.
And the increase would apply not just to the Gillis property, the 3 lots that they now own, that the city sold them, but it would apply throughout the entire downtown area. And it's not just what we kind of consider the area that's along where the library is and the downtown plaza, that area. It also includes land on Carroll Street,
Right.
where the old Daily Times used to be, which is across from the main entrance to the hospital.
Okay.
It includes 500 Riverside Drive, where as you come off that traffic circle they've put in and start going up Riverside Drive, just to the right towards the river. That's about 3 acres. The Daily Times site is about 2 acres. That's a total of a little less than 5 acres. 5 times 80, that's 400 units.
Mm-hmm.
That could be built there with no parking. That's not to say
no
it's
parking.
going to be developed that way, but
Right.
it could. So, you know, you'd have that much more traffic, and many people consider Carroll Street to be a mess already. It gets a lot of traffic.
It does.
Yeah, so in any event, that's really what will be before the Planning Commission. And I think the important thing to point out is, having lost in court, the Gillis Group now wants to change the entire downtown area density. Not just for them.
Right.
It would apply across the entire downtown district.
Okay.
And I've already indicated what we have in the way of a parking problem, and this would just compound it exponentially.
Yeah.
It would be a real mess. So that's the matter on the on the downtown density.
Okay. Now, who are the council members that we're talking about?
Well, the council members, the city council,
Yeah.
they're Shel Gregory,
Mm-hmm.
April Blake. They were on the old council before the
Angela
election
Blake?
last year.
Yeah.
They were both on it.
Oh yeah.
And they are very much, I think, in favor of just doing the development.
Mm-hmm.
Deshaun Dowdy, who's the president, he
Right.
was not. He's newly elected. April Jackson was on the old council. When they voted back in June of 2023 to sell the lots to the Gillis Group, she opposed it. She was, I think, the
Interesting, okay.
single opponent to that. And now we have Sharon DeShiel,
Yeah.
who's on it, and she was not on it then.
Okay.
So that's the makeup, 5 people on it. And they would make what's called a text change to the zoning code by ordinance.
Mm-hmm.
That could be vetoed. In other words,
Okay.
the mayor can veto that. And then to override it, it would take 4 votes if he vetoes it.
Okay.
So they could pass it 3 votes, and then if he would veto it, then it would be up to whether there's going to be
Tricky.
4 votes to override the veto.
Right.
Yeah, so.
Okay. So the long-term prognostication of all of the building for downtown results in a quagmire that is solvable or not.
I don't think it is, because to some extent it's confined by, number one, when they put Route 50 through,
Yeah.
that's more or less a line of demarcation. And then you've got 13 coming down. I still call them 50 and 13 because I moved here
I do too.
before the bypass.
Yeah.
And so you've got them got it like this. And then down below you have the 2 prongs of the river that meet right in, almost in downtown Salisbury. Now it extends a little bit across that. I said it goes over to Carroll Street.
Mm-hmm.
There's a little bit more in it. For example, there's, I think it's called the Riverview Condominium that's on Riverside Drive.
Yeah.
That's in the Central Business District.
Okay.
That was built about 15 years ago. It has adequate on-street parking, which was required at the time. And that's an example of what we could have if we had required on-street parking, say. But the Gillis Group, for example, there would be no, when I said on-street, I should have said on-site.
Right.
On-site parking for the Gillis apartments. There's none in the plan. They want the city to build them a garage for their tenants.
Aha.
I mean, so there's another fly in the ointment, if you will.
Right.
They want the taxpayers essentially
To
to
fund
fund
this.
the
Yeah.
parking for their tenants.
Okay.
And just incidentally, or coincidentally, the 450 unit parking garage would be nowhere sufficient to cover the parking demand. We did an analysis. We found a photo on Google from April of last year, 2023, that show the 3 parking lots that have been sold to Gillis. That photo was taken before they did the Unity Square Park,
Right.
which has eliminated about 50 or so spaces.
That's right.
Well, at that time, April of 2023, it was a Tuesday, there were 267, as I recall, vehicles parked there.
Mm-hmm.
So just to give you an example, if you had 220 apartments average would be about 2 bedrooms.
Right.
Just a rough guesstimate would be approximately 1.5 cars per unit.
Exactly.
That would be over 300 cars.
Mm-hmm.
Now, yes, some of those cars will be gone during the day. People will drive to their jobs. But then you have 257 on average coming in.
Yeah.
And so you can just do the math on this. And this is just those apartments.
Doesn't work.
Yeah, this is not including the
Right.
the other parking areas that have been sold.
Okay.
Say, or any of this new development we've been talking about, either the infill development of the existing buildings or the 1,000 or whatever number of seats it's going to be auditorium that the university wants to build where the library is now. So what you've got is essentially a potential royal mess, not unlike what's happened in Berlin. They now have a parking problem.
Right.
Now it's for a different reason. There's not a lot of residential development in downtown Berlin, but there's been a great expansion in what attracts parking, merchants and things like that. It's developed nicely.
Okay.
So they've got essentially the same problem. They have it in most small towns. They just don't have the capacity. And when you put in this 80 units per acre would be ultra high density.
Right.
40 units per acre is pretty high already, by far the highest in Salisbury.
Mm-hmm.
And this was done when there were required on-site parking. See, so now that's been eliminated. So what you've got is essentially an explosive mixture,
Got it.
just waiting for somebody to light the match. So,
Wow. Okay. Tell me about Horizon.
well, the Horizon program. This is another Jake Day matter that came up. He, I guess, thought that it would behoove him personally, and it did. He's now working for the state in a cushy job, to have a lot of development in downtown Salisbury. So, among other things, he got parking lots declared to be surplus. Now, that is really a misnomer.
Okay.
And here's why. The only reason the city can sell something, an asset that they have to declare it surplus, whether it's being used or
Really?
not. Yeah,
Okay.
that's just in the law, that they have to do that. And like I say, the 3 lots that they sold to Gillis that were declared surplus, back in April of last year, Tuesday morning, were being used to park almost 300 cars.
Right.
That's not surplus.
No.
But it's a fiction. You declare something surplus so you can sell it.
Okay.
Well, that's what they've done. They've had the lots declared to be, quote, surplus, and then they've sold them, not just to Gillis, but to other developers as well. Lot 10, where the flea market used to be held,
Mm-hmm.
that's been sold to essentially the same group that did the Ross, the
Okay.
student housing. They've bought that in the guise of having a hotel there. Whether
Right.
that's going to happen, I don't know. But regardless, whatever happens there, the parking's going to be gone.
Yeah.
Lot 16, that's a smaller lot along the river, more or less opposite the parking garage. That's been sold. That parks normally in a typical day, maybe 45 to 50 cars.
Right.
That's going to be, is intended to be developed for apartments. Those 50 cars are going to have to park somewhere else.
Yep.
Most likely the parking garage. That
Got
would be
it.
the closest location.
Okay.
So when you add all this stuff together, plus I did not mention the city did a sweetheart deal for the Ross, and they have essentially first dibs on almost 300 spaces in the parking
Really?
garage.
Okay.
The parking garage, I think I mentioned, was about 700.
Yeah.
So that's getting close. That's 45% of the parking spaces in the garage.
Wow.
And there's already a heavy demand. That's where I parked for years, in
Yeah.
the parking garage. That's where people that work in One Plaza East, a lot of people in the government office buildings, they don't have on-site parking.
Right.
They have very little for the elected officials. That's where they park. So essentially, we have almost, I'm not going to call it a glut, we do have a little bit of extra parking, but really, that's what you want.
Mm-hmm.
You want to have that. When we have a jury trial, sometimes as many as 200 jurors
Right.
will be summoned. They come in and they have to park somewhere. When they have any kind of an event, you can have a county council meeting some mornings. There might be 100 people there. Not always, but that's what they have. So you've got to design, just like when you design a street or you design the electricity for your house, the amperage, you have to design for what's going to be a peak. not what's going to be used at 3 a.m. in the morning.
Right, right.
So, and that's what we've done. Essentially, we've not really considered this. And when I say we, I mean the city,
That's right.
because they've let this happen. And so we're in a pretty perilous position right now.
Wow.
And that's been accentuated by the Horizon program, because what the Horizon program offers deep, and I mean long-term, tax waivers, property tax waivers for people who develop. There's a county program, there's a city program. The county program is just 10 years. And over that 10 years, my math may be wrong, but I think it's a 60% waiver.
Okay.
So the total property taxes you would pay over that 10-year period, you're going to only pay 40% of them, because 60% is going to be waived. The city program is even more lucrative for the developer. That's 20 years. That starts off and at 100% and then goes down in 5-year increments to 80, 60, and 40. That averages, I believe, 70% over a 20-year period. Now, in both those cases, to be sure, it's only the increase in value of the property due to the development.
Yeah.
So, for example, at the Ross, I think the pre-development value was in the range of $1.5 million or $2 million. Now it's something over $30 million.
Mm-hmm.
So the tax yield on that, of course, would be much higher.
Yeah.
But most of it's going to be waived for 5 years.
Right.
See, and then it's going to go down in increments. Now the argument is, well, this wouldn't occur, that wouldn't have been there, except for that incentive. Well, as I think we were talking earlier, there are other places where student housing could be developed.
Right.
I was the attorney that developed for the developer of the University Orchard. That opened, I think, in 2013. That's 600 plus, I think, around 650 beds. It's big, more than the Ross.
Yeah.
The Ross is, I think, 350 roughly. But there's a second phase there to that property, the old Hearn Farm. And when they did the planning for it, my client, it was they planned phase 1 and phase 2 because they sized some of the utilities for that, the sewer and water lines.
Okay.
But then they decided they had an option on phase 2, the remainder. It's
Right.
roughly 20 acres, as I recall. But they let it lapse because they could see at that time that the enrollment at SU, beginning in roughly 2010, was beginning to drop, was flatlining. It wasn't dropping, it was flatlining. 2014, it started dropping. And this is pre-COVID.
Yeah.
And it's now somewhat less. Last fall, it was about roughly 20% less than it was in 2014.
Okay.
That's state data that they publish each year. The data for this year is not out. The university has announced that their freshman class in particular is larger than it's been for a while. So presumably the enrollment has come up to some extent. I think they've said that it's roughly at pre-COVID levels.
Okay.
I'm guessing that would be 2019 maybe.
Right.
But between 2014 and 2019, it had already declined.
Yeah.
I don't have the data with me. I'm in the neighborhood, I think, of 400 or 500 students.
Okay.
So it's probably still less than it was in 2014. We don't know where it's going to go. We know that nationally, college enrollment, seniors in high school going to college, is flatlining or dropping for various reasons. Some of them go to community colleges, some of them go to trade schools, some of them go in the military.
Yeah.
So I mean, it doesn't look good, and the projections from the University of Maryland system show a relatively small increase in the future.
Okay. If you were talking to people in the audience and you were asking them what they should do, would the obvious answer be that they should contact the members of the city council and express concern about the way this thing is being handled?
Well, there's yes, that's obviously yeah, and you can there is a website address for them, all city council members. You can go on to the city council website and get that. You don't just put that in. You have to go on and get the link to it. But you'll see that under the city council part of the website for the city. That would be one way. Another way, if you're interested just in this downtown density, There is a petition our group has started. It's called Don't Strangle Downtown Salisbury. You can Google that or whatever engine you use to search the internet, and you'll come up with that. And you can sign on to it. I think it's somewhat over 350 now.
Right.
It's been up for about 10 days.
Okay.
And of course, you can come to the planning and zoning meeting tomorrow.
There you go.
It's going to be a public hearing.
Where's that being held?
It would be in 301,
Got
the big auditorium room in the government office building.
Okay.
I'm told, I don't know this for sure, that they're going to limit public comments to each individual to 3 minutes.
That's not enough time.
So yeah, so get your ducks in a row.
Okay.
So that's kind of the view on that.
Got it. Bob, I really want to thank you for coming by. This is perhaps the most erudite and specific explanation of what's going on here, because it is complicated, and I'm just hoping that people in the audience will do exactly what Bob has asked, that they will come to the meeting at 3:01 and they will express concern about strangling downtown Salisbury. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you. It's been a very interesting time.
It has been.
And it always is.
What's the Chinese proverb? We're living in interesting times.
I'll let that one up to you.
It's crisis. Okay, this is Billy Earl with Eastern Shore Politics. Thank you. Show up at this hearing. Make your voice known. Namaste.
Yeah.